This is Matthew McConaughey.
Natalie Portman.
James Patterson.
Michael Ian Black.
And you are listening to
Five Questions
with Dan
Schawbel.
Keith, welcome to Five Questions.
Thank you, Dan. Very thrilled to and excited to be on your show. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's so great to have you here. And as I've told you, because my nephew is obsessed with PAW Patrol, I'm like, I got to find this creator and find his backstory. And you have a really fascinating backstory. This is, PAW Patrol isn't just, your one hit in your career. You're more than a one-hit wonder. How did your experience designing characters at Jim Henson and working at an ad agency form the foundation for your career?
Well, I think the ad agency in particular really helped because in advertising, working as an art director, teamed up with a writer, we were allowed in those days, in the golden years of advertising, to disappear with a big magic marker and a big pad, and go down the pub and just come up with ideas and go back and show the creative director. As long as we came up with the ideas, he was fine. But it was all about just coming up with ideas, and then pitching those to the clients. And we were always looking for what we used to call the USP in advertising, unique selling proposition. We're always searching for that little nugget of something to give us the big idea. And I think that stayed with me on, the stuff that I do now for kids. I'm always looking for something original, a big idea that can, translate into many episodes that writers can really get their teeth into. So that really has helped me, I think, to search for that unique, idea within the show to try and make it stand out.
Yeah, and you're both kind of the creative, but you also have that business mind. So the combination of both in the arts world is extremely powerful. I talked to obviously a lot of celebrities and creatives and designers, and that seems to be where people go wrong, is not understanding the unique value proposition, as I like to call it in business too, which is similar to what you're saying.
That's been learned, to be honest. I mean, when I started off, all those years ago, I didn't really have the experience of children's TV back in the advertising days. I was working on them at home and thinking, well, one day I'm gonna try and get a show bought. And then it was really a bit of luck for me meeting up with a guy in particular called Peter Orton, who used to run Hit Entertainment. I met Peter at Jim Henson while I was working there. He was the big super salesman who sold the Muppets all over the world. It was probably the most successful TV show of its day. It was sold literally in every country in the world. And Peter was this brilliant salesman, and he set up Hit Entertainment. And that connection, I was able to go to him with my concepts that I'd been working on at weekends and evenings. I'd had children, I had 3 boys, so I could bounce all my ideas off my kids. I wake them up in the middle of the night and say, "Hey, what do you think of this one?"
Your focus group.
Yeah, my focus group. And I was able to take those ideas to Peter and phone him up. He was doing really, really well with Hit. And he said, yeah, come on in and show us. And of course, I laid out about 6 ideas, and one of them was Bob the Builder. And they immediately picked that one. And I kind of knew they would, just based on my advertising experience, sort of almost gearing them towards the biggest idea of the lot. And they went for that, and the rest really was history, because Bob took off really amazingly well. It became the biggest preschool show of its day, sold to practically every country in the world. Massive merchandising campaign. It did so well. And that was it's just a bit of luck for me to get a show that big off with my first show. But it opened so many doors for me, and I was able to then, start a career, jack my advertising sort of work in, and take up, creating IPs as my hobby, but also my job, which has been great. And then all those other shows came from that. But it really was learning about the business side, came from learning about lawyers, contracts, and how you get back end, and consulting fees, and so rights fees, and movie fees, and all those things were embedded within the contracts that obviously lawyers draw up, and I had to kind of learn that as I went along. Got myself an agent, and she sort of taught me a lot. So that's kind of been something that I've kind of been picking up as I've gone along over the last sort of I suppose I've been doing it since I think I was 40 when I cracked it with Bob. So it's 25 years now that I've been doing this every day. And I picked up, some pretty good experience on the business side.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about your time working in Bob the Builder, what you learned about intellectual property from, your lawyer and the people around you.
Well, primarily about how important it is to make sure that you're protected with a very good legal document, because when you sell your concept into a production company and they want to option it, and you're a green sort of inexperienced creator trying to sell their first show, it's easy to get sort of sidetracked, and you just want the deal so much you kind of don't really pay attention too much to what it is being offered. And I was lucky, I had a very good agent, and so learning about making sure that you get a really strong contract that gives you consulting fees, rights fees per episode, back end profit participation based on net profit after all costs are recouped, and everybody gets their money back, and then of course it's into profit, and everybody's winning then, because the company that took the risk paid back their investors, or all their production costs or their marketing costs, and everybody then is making profit, so they don't mind then paying you your back end, if you like.
Yeah, the incentives are aligned.
Yeah. So they obviously try to get it as cheap as possible. That's in the nature of the business. They'll try and sign somebody up, especially if you're not well known, your first idea. But if you stand firm, if you really believe in it, and try and negotiate and try and get it up just maybe a percentage point or two, it's worth the extra mile. If they really want it, they'll come back and say, no, we can't go any further, that's it. And then you have to make a decision. Do I want this to get made? At least I've got a show out there, at least I'll get something if it's successful. Otherwise it's back in the drawer, and you missed the opportunity. So you have to think about the production company's point of view, that they're taking the risk. They're putting millions of dollars into it, and their investors. So it has to work for them as well. So it has to, you have to compromise.
Absolutely. And aside from Bob the Builder, obviously you're known for PAW Patrol. What do you think has led to PAW Patrol becoming a billion-dollar empire with shows, movies, toys, and books?
I think that first of all, I wasn't sure that I'd ever see one as big as Bob before. I mean, that did close to $5 billion global sales. Bob's 20. Actually, Bob will be 25 years old, celebrating quarter of a century next April 24. Started in 1999 on British TV. I never thought I'd see, something as big as Bob. But when the opportunity came up with PAW, with Spin Master, they sent a brief to me with several other creatives around the world to have a pitch at this boys action adventure show, which it originally was supposed to be. When the idea came, and it was all based on this amazing technology that Spin Master had developed, this transforming toy technology, and they wanted to have emergency vehicles, obviously, in the show, because they're a toy company and they wanted to make it work. but I think the key idea for me was coming up with originally it was rescue dogs that have been taken in by a young boy and taught to rescue people in their individual emergency vehicles. And the kennels were the transforming element of that. So we saw their kennels transform on screen into these amazing vehicles. I think having pups, which were
that's a big part of it.
Universally, probably the most popular pet in the world, maybe even more so than cats.
Much more so than cats.
Yeah. Well, I know there are cat and dog people, but and I like cats as well. But I think if I look back on my childhood, we always had dogs since I was a young boy. So, and all my friends had dogs, and all my children's friends have dogs. So I kind of assumed that that's got to be the same in every country in the world. So it's got to stand a chance if it's pups. And then, of course, it's got the nurturing element, which is the pups and the cuteness. So both boys and girls are buying into that. They love that. And of course, you've got the high-tech, action-packed sort of sexy kind of vehicle play, which is probably a little bit more boy skewed on the merch with the vehicle play. But that really works as well. So you've got this show that combines two things. Boys and girls are loving it. And the amazing thing for me that's come out of it is how widespread the audience is. It's from 2 to at least 7. So you've got a 5-year span. Now, usually on preschool, you get a 2-year sweet spot, like Bob the Builder's like classic 2 to 4. Thomas the Tank Engine was probably 2 to 4. Some preschool shows are 3 to 6, and some are 4 to 6, 4 to 7, where they call that pre-cool, a little bit more, a bit more of a sort of transitional sort of show going into the sort of young boys, leading on to Marvel characters. But with Paw Patrol, we've been really lucky with this very wide age span where they're watching it very young and they're kind of staying with it till quite old, But then, of course, we've got another audience which has happened since the movie's released, because the movie takes it up a few gears. On the stakes are much higher. The quality of the animation is obviously movie quality. It looks amazing on screen. So you're getting even older kids going to see the Paw Patrol movies. So that's been really pretty cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was talking with my wife this morning. She's like, one of her friends has a 7-year-old who watches Paw Patrol. So it exactly, it's that age group up to 7 years old, but it's going to continue to expand.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say that. Spin Master must take all the credit for that, for making it into such a fantastic show. With Guru Studios in Toronto, have done an amazing job on the animation, and Viacom, powerhouse company, sort of doing all the marketing and the merchandising deals. And then you've got Paramount on board now with the movies, and Paramount Plus showing the show as well, along with Nickelodeon and Netflix also. So it's kind of
it's a lot of players involved.
It's got a lot of people are showing it, but it's sort of holding its own and doing really well. So that's been great to see.
And going back to what we were talking about earlier about not just kind of the content, but the business aspect, why has the merchandising of Paw Patrol been a higher priority over the content, and how is that different than the time in which you worked at Henson?
Well, I think that the fact that Paw Patrol is so appealing to all age groups, boys and girls, has really helped the merchandising, and it's universal. It appeals, as I say, to every country, and it has just taken off. And whether we see one as big again, I don't know. I'm always obviously coming up with new ideas myself on a daily basis, and hoping one day I'll get another breakout hit. But it is hard to see how one is going to get to the heights of Paw Patrol. It's up to $14-15 billion now. So it's gone over three times what Bob did. But I mean, the Muppets was big, but then the Muppets, don't forget, was more of a primetime show, more of a sort of adult type show. Kids did watch it, but adults were watching it. We were all watching at art college. We'd run out from art college to watch the Muppets, and we were all sort of 18, 19, and it did amazingly well with its merchandising. And of course, in those days, they were getting prime time license fees for the TV show. So Jim Henson was making fortunes on the broadcasting income, as well as the licensing, merchandising and licensing. So it had these two huge streams coming in. Now, of course, in preschool shows, you don't get that sort of income on the broadcasting. It's much more difficult to get a good deal with a broadcaster. They're not paying license fees like they used to. They're smaller, and it's harder to get them on the channels these days because they have many more thousands of shows to choose from. There's thousands of brilliant production companies all over the world now. Everybody's up their game. China, India, Australia, South America, Korea. They're all doing great shows, and they're all pitching great ideas. So these broadcasters have many more shows to choose from, but they still have the same few slots. So to get a show away is still very tricky.
Very competitive. I remember watching a documentary about the Ninja Turtles and how they had action figures that I collected when I was younger.
Yeah.
But in order to sell the action figures, they created a TV show. So the merchandising happened before the media. Yes, that's sometimes happens, or something could come through on a very successful book, let's say publishing concept, and TV company or production company will option the rights to the books and turn that into a TV show. Diary of a Wimpy Kid, I had that author on, Jeff Kinney.
Yeah, so there could be merch already out there on the shelves in some form, in a smaller way, based on the success that they've had on maybe a licensing character that's only ever appeared as a licensing on shelf in stationery or let's say on clothing, but then suddenly gets picked up and turned into a TV show. Many more people know about it now, and then it expands the L&M sort of expands greatly to make it a much bigger brand.
Yeah, there's different ways of going about it. What is your best piece of career advice?
Best piece of career advice, I would say, you can be talented, and there are many talented artists and creators, but you've got to back that up with drive and ambition. You've got to have that real ambition to want to make it. It's basically the same in any sport. If you look at any great sportsmen, they've come through. There's just something, they have the talent, but they've got the drive and they've got the belief that they're going to make it. And I think that you need that in the same way in creating shows and movies. You have to stick with that idea. You have to totally believe it. Don't listen to people who say, "Oh, you'll never get anywhere with that." "Oh God, are you still doing that? Why don't you give up?" I mean, just stay with the dream and just keep going, even if it means you've got to take another job to earn the money to pay the mortgage. You just do this at weekends and night times, which is exactly what I did.
Yeah, me too. Moonlighting, they call it.
Yeah, moonlighting, because it's all speculative, all creative stuff really is, until you get something away. It's all time speculative.
My parents used to say, don't quit your day job.
Yeah, exactly. So until you get that success, you can't really then do it as a full-time career. I've been lucky. I had that, so I've got that financial sort of freedom now to be able to do this as a job and work anywhere in the world, which is really nice. I just need my laptop and I can sit anywhere and work, which is what I do now.
You're a digital nomad.
Yeah, but
That's what they call them.
Even now, I don't stop. I never stop. I'm always creating. I'm always coming up with new shows or films or books so I've got many projects on the go that I delve into on a daily basis to move each one of them forward. A lot of them are picked up with production companies around the world who I have to have Zoom calls with, China, New Zealand, or America, or India, different time zones. And, you have to just keep on pushing them forward with the development with writers and animation studios. And, I've got many of those on the go, and I sort of just have to get them forward. They spend a year or 2 years developing, and then they're ready to pitch. And then, of course, you go through this whole pitch routine, and the broadcasters don't come back to you, and you spend about 6 months chasing them, and they come back eventually. And then you have another round of the meetings, and they've completely forgotten about the idea, and you have to repitch. And then, of
This
course,
is the non-glorious part.
yeah. But you have to keep on, you have to be like a sort of dog with a bone. And then eventually, you get a bit of luck, and somebody's looking for a show like that, or they don't have, or they've got. You might pitch something, they will have a show similar on the same themes, but when you go and speak to them, say 2-3 years later, where you refresh the idea, that first show didn't work or whatever, it's just gone away, wasn't very successful, so they couldn't make series 2. And you go back in with yours and you tweak it slightly, it's still a great idea. So you can actually, resurrect old great ideas that perhaps it's all about timing and meeting the right person at the right time, a lot of it. So you need 3 things. You need,
it's like you're giving relationship advice too.
Obviously the talent, you need some talent. You've got to be able to come up with good ideas, and you've got to be creative. You've got to have the determination, but you need a little bit of luck as well, as any successful person in the world will tell you. He had a little bit of luck along the way.
Well, that's great advice, and thank you so much for being on the show.